Welcome back to Hilaal Live. Now, censorship of a pro-Palestine post within social media has come under the microscope, as many within the Meta platform have complained that their posts have either been removed or totally blocked. This has now raised the questions of whether the freedom of speech remains, especially in the Western democratic nations. Joining us now to discuss this, I'd like to welcome independent arts journalist Atiya Khan and Zinat Adam from the Afro-Middle East Center. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Atiya, I want to start off with you. It's not surprising, isn't it? Because the sentiment, the tide is really changing, and these platforms may feel that it's a bit too much in terms of the pro-Palestine posts that are on there. Is that a fair assessment?
No, I don't think that's a fair assessment because every bit of awareness at the moment is helping get the message out, and you can see the result of that. You can see what is happening globally, and it's because of social media and not because of mainstream media that the narrative is shifting. It's because of social media that our communities everywhere are mobilizing all over the world. So I don't believe that there can be too much. I think there's actually not enough at this point.
Not enough. Is there not enough, Zinat? Because, I mean, I think all three of us who use social media, there is really, the information is coming because mainstream media, of course, they're pushing a different narrative, but it is down to social media where you really get information where you just never find on mainstream media because they still continue to push that narrative.
We have to remember that social media is all about the algorithms. So perhaps you and I are seeing it because we're engaging on those posts on a regular basis, but many other people aren't. We first saw the shift onto social media working for Palestinians with the occupation of Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in Jerusalem. And now we're seeing it really heightened from Gaza. But the threat on the journalists is still there. They are being targeted regularly. And then you have the Israeli government engaging with Meta and engaging with what used to be known as Twitter to try and curb that. So we have noticed the shadow banning. We have noticed that a lot of our reposts are not being seen by the audiences that we would previously have. Last week was particularly difficult for those of us who don't want to see the censorship. But what I can say is just keep resharing, keep getting that out there so that people know what's going on in Gaza.
Atiya, I want to come to you. So, of course, when October the 7th happened, Arsenal player Alexander Zinchenko posted that he stands with Israel. 2 days later, you've got many players, especially those of Arab descent and Middle Eastern, coming out saying that they support Palestine. Those ones, of course, being immediately taken off and, of course, suspended by the Premier League or other leagues. But, of course, Alexander Zinchenko, he's free to go ahead and still continue to post. The hypocrisy is there for everyone to see, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it's not only been athletes. It's been artists, it's been, journalists, it's been art organizations. There have been death threats to anybody in the world that has been speaking out. There have been jobs lost. There have been organizations firing editors, journalists being quietly let go from the BBC and the CNN. And athletes are an incredible example because they have the platform. They actually have such a big influence and so many people that they speak to. So it doesn't work both ways. We know how one-sided the narrative is. But because many people, including many South Africans, still consume a lot of mainstream media, many people are not on social media. I mean, posts have been shared. I think the presence of WhatsApp means that things go from social media onto WhatsApp, which is great. But there's a big community that's not on Instagram, that's not on X, that's not on Facebook, that's not on TikTok. And TikTok has been doing a lot of great work. So I think that why we need to continue pushing is, especially in a time like now where electricity is cut, mobile networks and communication is cut, we need to still keep the cause alive because it's just getting worse and worse. Every day is worse than the previous day.
Zenit, Human Rights Watch have come out and said that they're noticing an alarming censorship of pro-Palestine posts. For Human Rights Watch to come out and say this, I mean, this does raise alarm bells, doesn't it? The question is, will Meta and X, run by Elon Musk, really take note of this, or are they just going to fold their hands and say, well, there's nothing really we can do about it?
There is a lot that they can do about it, and they haven't been doing. And what they have actually done is to curb and to censor us, and then come out and say, well, there's a glitch in the system, and that's the reason why things were shadow banned, and that's the reason why anyone who was supporting Palestine was marked as a terrorist. This happened 2 weeks ago. Most of us, anyone who even posted the word Alhamdulillah, was receiving a ban and a shadow ban and was being targeted. Then Meta came out saying, sorry, glitch in the matrix, and we've factored it in, and now it should be okay. But we're still noticing that the shadow banning is taking place. In addition to that, I think it's important for us to note that there's physical targeting of the journalists in Gaza, and these are citizen journalists because most of them just ordinary Gazans who are living in the occupied area, trying to get their messages out. Mu'taz, Bisan, Anat, these are some of the names of the Palestinians, and they are being targeted. And the Al Jazeera journalists in particular are being attacked. So we saw Wael Duda's family was obliterated. Yesterday, 19 members of an Al Jazeera engineer were also killed. We know that Yumna Al-Said had a death threat against her and was told, leave your apartment building now and move to the south or you will be targeted. And this comes on the back of Blinken calling the Qatari government and asking them to curb Al Jazeera's reporting because they know what damage this is doing to their narrative and they aren't able to control that and continue with the propaganda.
Atia, both you and I, being journalists, a lot of fake news sometimes will reach us. And of course, emotions are very high. It could be anything. And obviously, people feel the need to go ahead and post it. And it does cause more harm than good. How do you go ahead and make sure that within the filtering, you know that this is the most accurate news, even though communications are cut from Gaza, and it's really a challenge to find out the difference between real and fake?
Yes, and it is the Western media has specifically manufactured a lot of fake content and massive platforms that I would normally want to write for, such as the New York Times, as they have, pushed this propaganda to a very damaging level, to the point where now, obviously, it's contributed to Islamophobia in the world and also attacks in the U.S. There was a Muslim woman killed in Texas a few days ago. So my advice for people is to do their homework, to seek the journalists on the ground, to seek the citizen journalists also, so just regular people who are documenting, even though the connection situation is happening, there are still content going out. And then also, another way to look through this is to verify content that has been shared multiple times from like the same event from different sources. Because when it's just one video that is very shocking, everybody, even the aunties on WhatsApp, are very guilty of this. I have to always check when I receive things, what does this feel like? What does this look like? Can I look it up immediately and find the headlines? Can I find multiple sources for this video? And especially at how quick information is shared now. So I would say multiple sources posting the same thing, maybe from a different angle, looking at the people on the ground and checking in with what's happening with them. Because as we've mentioned, the internet has been cut off. There's no fuel, there's no electricity, there's all these things. But there are still some journalists still working and doing this. And those accounts do exist.
Zenit, I'm going to end off with you. Do you feel the tide is changing? I want to bring in Piers Morgan, for example. So when the conflict had started 3 weeks ago, Piers Morgan, of course, had that one line, do you condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th? But I've been seeing his tweets now, whether it's genuine or not, that, of course, is a question that remains up in the air. But he seems to be changing his narrative in terms of course, when we saw the Jabalia camp, the refugee camp being bombed, he was scathing of Israel. And that, of course, had been done through, of course, social media and the posts that have been happening on social media and, of course, the reporting from Al Jazeera. Looking at it, and I know obviously we can only see it from a South African perspective, do you feel the tide is changing, not from a mainstream media perspective, but from a social media perspective?
Certainly from a social media perspective, we're seeing a lot more people becoming aware of the situation in Palestine. With Piers Morgan, I think it's more about the numbers because he's really had a stronger following and he's hit those numbers after Bassem Youssef's interview. And he's had a series of other interviews with important voices on the Palestinian issue, such as Loki, such as Rafah, was the woman from the Rafah border from Egypt. So I think for him, it's more a numbers game. Hopefully, because of their responses and because of their voices, perhaps that's also changing his mindset on what's really going on the ground. So those voices are definitely critical, and we need to continue to elevate that to mainstream media as far as possible.
Zinat, Atya, Jazakallah so much for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Shukran for having us.
I mean, that's independent arts journalist Atya Khan and Zinat Adam from the Afro Middle East Center. After the break, I'll have your latest in news. Do stay tuned.